Hello and welcome to Shifting Lanes Garage. My name's Chad. I'm here with Greg, and we have a very special guest this week for you guys. We have Tom, aka the owner of War Admiral, the greatest Fox body I have ever laid eyes on, and the co-founder of the FiveO Asylum podcast. Gentlemen, how are we doing today?
I'm good, man. Thanks for having me on, guys. It's funny because I've seen you guys around Blue Sky, but we've never met in person. I don't even know how that's possible.
It's a little strange because we've been in the same place at the same time.
Yeah,
Just
just gonna say, literally same place, same time, and it's never happened. So, virtual
We left their
handshakes,
open
sir.
house. Right. We left their open house and I saw your guys' videos. Like, how did I not talk to these guys?
We were. I mean, I did. I bring. I think I brought my kids to that, right? So I was busy trying to wrangle a 6-year-old and a 4-year-old. So I've that's my excuse. Chad, what's your excuse?
content.
There you go. trying to make videos.
Right. So what's going on, man? I started dabbling in your guys' videos a little bit more after you invited me on. You guys talk about like all cars.
Yes.
Or I'm more of like a single Mustang genre, so it's kind of, this is a different platform than I'm used to. So it's kind of
Yeah,
interesting. And excuse my voice, Chad, because like I said, and everybody listening and watching, kind of been a little bit under the weather. So my voice is just starting to come back. So hopefully it doesn't go out on me totally.
Well, we appreciate you soldiering on and being on with us. As a lot of our viewers know, we basically started this as an excuse to go like be invited to like cool car stuff. So like the New York Auto Show, the International Motor Press Association used to do this event called Test Days, where they literally just handed you keys to the latest and greatest from pick an OEM. And like that was it for us. And then we're like, holy cow, this is becoming a bit of a thing. So we got in it as like general enthusiasts. I think in the life of this channel, I've owned a Lexus, a BMW, a Volvo, and a Mustang. So it's we were just kind of all over the place. But yeah, I mean, it's interesting. It's just sort of evolved. We've been doing this for 11 years, so it's just sort of an evolution.
Yeah.
And there was a time where we were sort of chasing the algorithm. Like Greg had a Volvo, so it's like, what's better than one Volvo according to this algorithm? Two Volvos, and that's how I ended up with mine. And then we sort of realized that it's better to do with what you work with what you love as opposed to doing something. Not that I had the Volvo, not that I didn't love the Volvo when I had it, but it was a job to work on that thing. It sucked all of the enthusiasm right out of it. So, but we've adapted, and here we are.
I got to ask, Greg, of all cars, a Volvo?
Well,
How does that happen?
It's I really liked Volvo because my 60-second elevator speech on Volvo is I really liked Volvo growing up because one of my friends as a kid, his mom had one. It was an old 240, and I was just like, I don't know why, I just fell in love with like the brickness of it. It was just kind of an interesting car. And then I found out that they took a newer brick and actually went racing with a wagon. I'm like, well, that's weird. That's kind of cool. I kind of just fell into that and always like respected Volvo. The Volvo's one of those things that you like, it's like sneaky fast. You'd never expect it because they're like the safe car brand. And then you figure out, oh, well, some of these 5-cylinder 850s from the 90s, they're out there with huge turbos. You're slapping big, friggin' 84 74s on them, and you're making like 600 horsepower, and you're beating Lamborghini Gallardos in roll races. So like I just love that it's just that kind of sneaky performance nature. Like no one expects the Volvo, and I kind of love that about it, which is kind of cool. But don't get me wrong, I love me a good powerful Mustang, but Volvos are just kind of interesting in that respect for me. I'm a big fan of interesting cars. Not saying
I
Mustangs
get
aren't,
it.
but just interesting that you wouldn't expect kind of thing.
I get it. Everybody's got their thing,
Yeah.
right? I mean, Chad, if you had to pick, like this is your show, and I'm so used to hosting the podcast, I automatically go to
Go for it.
questions, right? So, but like again, I don't know. I don't. What would be your car of choice? I mean, if you had to pick only one.
Only one car. See that I'm
Ooh.
I'm sure you understand this, but that varies depending on not even what time of year you ask me that question again in 3 months, ask me that question in 6 months. I always look at it, it's like, what would be an interesting, cool project? So, for example, the Mustang, I always wanted, and it's something my dad and I always talked about, was having something that, because he had a 59 Corvette that he, literally, there wasn't a nut and bolt on it that he didn't go through and modify. Took out the 283, put in a 327 that was bored, stroked, balanced, blueprinted, the whole nine. So I've always wanted to do that level of a build in the modern day with, quote unquote, it's not even that crazy anymore to have 705 at the wheels, but it's my Mustang, I always wanted that powerful car, right? And went down the rabbit hole of making it, quote unquote, reliable. But right now, if I won the lottery tomorrow, the next project I would do is a canyon carver. And I don't want your typical sort of like Miata or S2000 or something. I've landed on, and Chad will back me up on this, but it's the build I would do would be a Datsun 510 with a pissed off, naturally aspirated K24 stroked out to a 2.5 liters, 9,000 RPM redline, 350-ish horsepower. Just something I just picture being at the tail of the dragon that I could just rip on and have an absolute blast. And to me, one of the things I love about my Mustang is the fact that the redline goes beyond 7, right? You don't necessarily think of a 7,600 RPM redline in an American V8. But I love that. I love cars with that you can rev and you really get that sensation of speed, even if you're not going all that fast. So that would be the car I would get tomorrow. Like if I won Mega Millions, I would call Jeff and Jesse up on Blue Sky and be like, I have an idea and I don't care how much money it costs. Here we go.
That's wild. So actually, I can't see Facebook for some reason. It's saying that the event has ended on my side. But regardless, I don't know who's watching and who's not. But that's really the connection and how I ended up on your guys' podcast, right? Like through Blue Sky. You guys have known Jeff and Jesse forever, right?
Yeah, we went to high school with them. So I actually used to drive Jesse to school in high school. So in my Jelly Bean Ford Taurus, that was an absolute tragedy of a car. The thing was horrible, but hey, got me around, got Jesse to school in high school, and Jesse used to live about 2 miles from me in the same neighborhood, not even. So that's how I knew him. And actually, Jeff was in very similar part. He's only like 2.5 miles down the road, almost in the same part of the neighborhood. So we knew those guys. I also I was only 1 year ahead of Jeff's brother Jason in high school too.
Okay.
So we knew those guys, and then we found out through them posted on either Facebook or somewhere that they had a car shop, and we're like, hey, we like cars. And then we stopped by, chatted with them, and we're like, we got to work together at some point because this is just way too cool. So lo and behold, Chad got a Mustang, and the rest is history. And now he's got a 700 wheel horsepower S550, and it's quite wonderful.
Almost.
As someone who's driven it recently, it's very, very nice.
Yeah. And almost awesome. 30K in parts later, here we are.
Oh, you're preaching to the choir, man. I know.
Oh, trust me. I know that number probably is like, oh, that was the first generation of this car. Let me tell you about the next 6 times I did it or something. But that's actually an interesting segue into and we'll touch later in the show on more the minutia of your car and everything like that. But just the sort of like back of the book, why a Fox Body?
So honestly, it's the only car that's ever really like I've been drawn to where I felt like I had to have it since I was in high school, right? I used to cruise around with my friend Rod, one of my oldest friends, and he actually was the first one out of my group of friends to own a Fox Body. He had a yellow 87 T-top car. And he drove it by my house one day when he first got it with his dad. And the way it sounded, it just sounded like nothing else that I heard at that time. They have a very distinct sound, and I was just drawn to it from that point forward. And I've had 9 of them.
Holy shit.
Wow.
No, 11. Yeah, 11 of them over the years. But this car was the first car that I did a full restoration on. But it's always been the one car. Listen, I like a lot of cars. Like I like older school cars. I'm very much in the rat rod scene. I like that stuff. But it's the only car that I ever was like drawn to where I felt like I just had to own. I can't even explain why. It's just I was just anyone's a car guy and they like a specific car. It's just I don't know. I was just drawn to it from the get go. It's just one of those things, I guess. There's no explanation for it, Chad. I just had to have it.
No,
Everyone's got that one.
I totally understand that. I mean, like I said, for me, it sort of varies. It's, I have car ADD. I could sit here and list like 10 cars. Like, I definitely want a second gen Viper coupe, the GTS, like 100% that's on my list or whatever. But it's like, that'll be first, then it'll be this, then it'll be a C6 Z06 Corvette, then it'll be this, then it'll be that. Like, I had a Greg will tell you, I had a JDM phase when I was with the Lexus and everything like that.
Yep.
And I'm the type of person that if I'm into something or I'm into the car, I can't just learn about let's say the engine, like the 2J. It's like, oh, it's cool. It can do this, 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 and this. Oh, that's pretty interesting, blah, blah, blah. It's like, let me consume every piece of information I can have on this. Let me talk to experts and things of that nature. I have a buddy of mine who knows Jeff and Jesse, and if you watch Cletus McFarland, he's the former owner of the Rat Rod Supra, but he knew everything under the sun about 2J motors. So I probably to the point of annoyance, talked his ear off. But in the moment, like I could see something and it speaks to me, and this is awesome. And because I can't play with it, I move on to the next thing just to keep my brain moving. I wish I could sit here and say
right.
that, like Greg, you've had, as far as the channel is concerned, 4 different Volvos. Or actually 6 technically, although 2 of them are never going to see the channel again. But that's
correct.
A story for another day.
Maybe in short form. But,
sounds like a long story.
But not in. It's a long story. One of them much longer than the other, for sure. As in 4 years, kind of with a big old scam in the middle. But yeah, I think the Volvo stuff. Yeah, I've been more focused. Moving forward, I love Volvos and we have a good Volvo following, but like want to branch out and do more stuff and do more cars because life's too short to just drive one brand, in my opinion. While that brand is cool and everyone has their one car, like I want to drive different stuff. Like I would love a off-road Toyota not RAV4, God. Although I've driven an off-road RAV4 and that was actually pretty badass. But a Toyota 4Runner, like a lifted 4Runner or a lifted like FJ, those are really cool. Stuff like that. So cool. So like stuff like that, I would love to do, more sports car things. And like to answer your question of like, you win the lottery tomorrow, what are you going to get? Like, I think the most beautiful modern car, if not the most beautiful car ever made, in my opinion, is the 2014 through 2018 Aston Martin V12 Vanquish. It's just the lines on that thing are.
Greg's the bougie one in the group, if you couldn't tell.
Right, I can tell.
You'll come to rease I'm a big fan of Euro design. So, not that I don't.
You've owned an Aston Martin, just saying.
I used to own Tavarish's Aston Martin.
There's nothing wrong with the Euro stuff, man. Like I love Audi.
Right,
Audis are awesome.
Audi. If I had to buy one car right now that did everything, Audi RS6. That thing it's really cool looking and. This is the first one we've got in the States. Plus, it's just cool. So I'm a big Audi fan, especially with the wagon stuff. So
I've had a bunch of them over the years too. Because I used to work before what I do now. I worked for Audi and Porsche of America, and I wholesale
cool
Porsche, Audi, and Volkswagen parts nationwide. I can't see the comments, but it looks like my boy Brent Hicks House Videos. He's also another YouTuber, Fox Body YouTuber.
Nice. What's up, Brent? Thanks for joining, and thanks to all our regulars that are watching, and also Doug in chat. What's up, dude? Thanks for joining. Appreciate it.
Yeah. So I fell in love with Audis years ago when I worked for them before I did what I do. They're great cars, man. Awesome.
Yeah, they're cool. They also have a 5-cylinder that sounds glorious. So I love me a good Audi as well.
Yeah. So Chad, you're a Mustang guy?
So, yes. A lot of my car. Well, actually, I shouldn't say a lot of it. All of my stuff kind of branches back to my father, growing up with cars. So when I found out that he had a '59 Vet, he had a '66 Mustang. Those Corvette and Mustang instantly became my two favorite cars. So I've always wanted a Mustang or a
What a
Corvette.
contradiction, dude. What a contradiction.
I'm not one of those. I'm not going to sit here and tell you. I don't necessarily have quote unquote any sort of brand loyalty. I don't know. I guess it was similar to like my dad's like, hey, look at this cool car. Look at this cool car. Even down to the fact that he was crazy into old British roadsters like MGs and Triumphs and things like that. That didn't stick with me, if I'm being perfectly honest. But it was one of those things. So the quick backstory with the Mustang is I actually was crazy close to actually getting a C6 Z06 in the exact spec I wanted. It had even had a couple of the minor mods that I was going to do. And as you know, when you buy a car with mods, as long as they're done right, like it is somewhat of a risk, but as long as they're done right, you're paying pennies on the dollar for what those parts and labor and everything actually cost. So it was interesting. And at the very end of it, the numbers just didn't really work out because he was asking a little too much for it, which was within budget, but it was just a little too much with the financier and everything. I was like, nah. And then my current Mustang came along. Very, very good price. So I picked that up, and it was about $8,000 cheaper than the Vet. So I could immediately start doing things like headers, intake manifold, tuning, all of that stuff. So yeah, I mean, I've always had a soft spot. I mean, here's the funny thing. So like I said before, we were journalists before we really got into like project cars and stuff. And at that test days things I was talking about, well, I actually drove a 2015 S550 Mustang GT, and I remember getting out of it and being like, man, the shifter and the transmission in this suck. Lo and behold, the MT82 is a hot pile of garbage, but I didn't know that until later on in life. So I remember that, and I was like, I don't know, but yeah, I've never been one to, American over imports, blah, 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 all this other sort of stuff. It's what's cool is cool, and what I like. And I like I said, there's so many things bouncing around my head that aren't just like, sure, there's the next S550 build if I was to get a Mustang, but then there's also like, well, if I'm going to do that, might as well put a pissed off, and we'll get into this with Greg's news piece a little bit, but why not put in a pissed off Illuminator crate engine or what have you, go NA, and doing a handling Fox Body. That's something that's like popped into my head, and do
now you're speaking my language.
Have something with 550, 620-ish horsepower, what have you, that's meant to handle, have, again, that 7,600 RPM red line. Now that's again. I what have I mentioned? Like 4 different cars off the top of my head, all from like different eras and stuff.
It's funny you say that. Not to interrupt you, Chad.
No, please do.
It's funny you say that because we talk about this a lot on the podcast. Like it's my belief that the Fox Body is almost the perfect platform for all of that stuff, right? Like drag racing, road racing, daily driving, just cruising, whatever you want to do with it. Like the suspension, 4-link rear suspension, all that stuff from the factory. It was just designed so well to do all of those things. And with aftermarket, I don't know that there's another car that has the same amount of aftermarket support as a Fox Body. I mean, it's got to be in the top 5 aftermarket parts wise.
I would imagine so. And by the way, if you are listening to this, Tom is the owner of, like we said, War.Admiral, but you can follow him for podcasting on FiveO Asylum. It's 5, the number 0, or the letter O, Asylum on Spotify. Go search that. You can also find him on Instagram at War.Admiral.363, and just go gaze in wonder at his ridiculously amazing Fox Body build, which is Now I will out myself a little bit here. I've never been a Fox Body guy. However, I would
And muting
gladly
Greg.
take your car and drive it for the rest of eternity.
Well, I
It is
appreciate
one
that.
of the 3 I've ever seen that I'm like, yep, that needs to be in my life.
So when did you see it for the first time, Greg? Like I said,
I
we've never
think
talked in person, so
I think I saw it at their old shop for the first time. Um, you were getting some sort of maintenance done and had dropped it off a couple of years ago, and I had just seen it. I'm just like, what is that? Like
Right.
that is no, I don't. I'm not a big Fox Body guy, but ooh, gimme. That was the big like light
the
bulb
funny thing
moment when
is,
I saw it.
I don't think I've ever dropped it off there for just maintenance, right? Like maintenance to me is like, yo, put mini tubs in my car, right?
It was something, and then it really solidified it when it was at the new shop, and it was up on the 2 post as you walk in the back door on the left, and it had like the plastic draped over it. It had the engine bay open, and I'm just like, yeah, that convinced me. I'm in. I'm in. I'm all in now.
Yeah, so I mean, we've been talking a minute here. So do you guys know the story behind the car?
No, please tell us.
So it's anyone who's watching, I can't see any views anywhere for some reason. It's saying the event is ended. I don't know who's in here, who's not.
Oh,
Some people
Tom,
in
check
here
your
may.
DMs. I sent you a link to the actual live feed itself.
Gotcha. On Facebook, this is.
I sent you Instagram DM to the link to Facebook.
And while Tom does that, hello everyone else that's joining. Thank you guys so much for joining up. We have a couple other regulars. We got Ryan, we got Steve. Welcome, gents, and thanks for joining in. We're gonna kind of talk with Tom about his car, get a little bit more backstory, and then we'll get to it before we get to our first news piece.
Yes.
All right. So long story short of it, some people may have heard this story, some people may have not. So I've owned, like I said, nine Fox bodies that were able to be driven, 11, 2 of them that couldn't. I never finished. We'll go back to the beginning because it's a long story where this car came from. I'll keep it as short as possible. So I had a '89 white GT that was like my pride and joy. And long story short of it is, my wife and I tried to have we were gonna have a baby, so we ended up having to do in vitro. So I sold all my Fox body stuff, all my Mustang stuff, um, to make that happen. Back then, I didn't have great health insurance, so everything had to come out of pocket. So after that happened, I took a really long break, like a decade, right, or so, without having anything, no cars at all. And then this car that I own now was my father's best friend's car. So I tried to buy this car for years and years, and he wouldn't sell it to me. It was his pride and joy. It was sitting there as a rolling chassis for a long time. Would not sell it. What happened was my father ended up getting esophagus cancer, and he went from talking to like you and me are talking now, normal. 8 weeks later, he was gone. Right. So
That sucks.
I was raised by a single dad. Um, that wasn't easy. So I was very close to him because of that. Right. My mom had left us years and years ago. That like really broke me because I mean, listen, at the end of the day, as we all die, life comes. It is what it is, right? Like that's part of life. But when it happens suddenly, some people can handle it, some people can't. And in most cases, I can. But when it came to my father, I was a broken dude, man, like bad in a bad mental state. So that comes into play because my father's best friend owned my car, and talking to him after the funeral and all this stuff, he realized that I just wasn't right. I was in like depression and just not in the right mental state. So one day I'm driving home and I had a commuter car. It was a Jeep Liberty. I'm talking to my good friend Rod on the phone, and this thing, poof, all I see is smoke. I pull over. I'm like, what the hell's going on here? Open the door and look underneath it. The whole thing's up in flames. So I just grabbed my whatever personal belongings that were right there, hop out of the car, and I watched this thing burn down. Watch the fire department comes, the whole deal. They put the thing out. I'm like, damn. So I just lost my dad. My commuter car just caught on fire. Bob didn't know this, but 4 hours after the Jeep burnt down, he calls me. Bob is my father's best friend. And he's like, yo, man, like, I've been thinking about it. If you want the car, it's yours. I'll sell it to you. So like
Wow.
ended up getting the car after trying to get it for like after 12 years. It was kind of his way of like, yo, man, I got you, you know? And so yeah, that's how I acquired the car. And then from there, it was like I owned this thing. So I sat in my garage for a year and a half. And you know, because of the sentimental value, the dude cried when he gave me when I bought the car from him, you know. He didn't want to let it go, but he was kind of like looking out for me in a sense. So I sat
Yeah.
on the car for like a year and a half, like, what am I gonna do with this thing? Like I could do like 306 supercharger, like an old school build, not painted. The car was originally wild strawberry, it was red. And I just couldn't let that happen, right? So I couldn't I I knew what the car meant to him, and now what the car meant to me. I wanted to do something special with it. I didn't want to just do a plain Jane build. And not that my car is the greatest thing on earth, because listen, there's cars out there that are just utterly amazing in the Fox Body world and in every world. But to me, it's perfect, right? So I was like, all right,
You're gonna get
I
two
need to
votes here
enlist.
on that as well. Just saying.
So,
Absolutely.
you know, it was like, what do I do? Like, I'm capable of putting this car together myself. I'm capable of painting it myself. But this is where self-evaluation comes into play, right? And you know, you guys being YouTubers, I'm sure you guys promote doing work yourselves and all that stuff. And that's great. But for me, I've done it 8 or 9 times and I knew my skill level, right? Like, yeah, I could put paint on a car, but is it gonna be the kind of quality that I'm looking for, the end result for this specific car? And that's kind
Right.
of how Jeff and Jesse got involved with the build. I saw Mustangs sitting out in front of their parking lot for years because I worked for the power company driving by. I'm like, oh, let me go talk to these guys. And I'm thinking it's going to cost 20 grand, right? Yeah, Jesus, was I wrong about that? You know, but
Spiral.
20 grand is like stripping the car.
20 grand was the paint, bro. You know what I mean?
Yeah, exactly.
But at the end of the day, I mean, that's how the build started, you know. And then what sold me on them, we'll just touch base on it real quick because you guys have been knowing them for years, is I walked in there, I talked to Jeff, because you know, the old shop, there was 2 buildings. So I stopped in, I was talking to Jeff about the mechanical part. She seemed super interested. He's like, oh, dude, we're Fox Buddy guys. Like, I had one. Jesse still owns one. I was like, oh, this place seems like where I wanna bring my car, you know. So I
Yeah.
talked to him, and I'm the type of person where I really like blunt. I don't like to kick the can down the road in any situation. So I was comfortable with Jeff, and he's like, oh, go talk to Jesse and see what you think about him, and we'll make a decision and come up with a plan. And I wanted to paint the car white. Like, I initially wanted to paint the car white because that was my old car. That was the car I sold to have my daughter, right? So I wanted to
Right.
kind of revisit that.
Yeah. Like
And I mentioned,
another emotional connection.
right. So I walk up there, I'm talking to Jesse, and we're talking. He's like, oh, yeah, everything sounded great. He's like, oh, what color you want to do it? And I'm like, white. He just looks at me and says, dude, I'm not painting your car white, bro. I'm like, what? It's my car, man. Like, you're gonna paint it whatever color I say. He's like, no, man, I'm not painting your car white. And the reason was, he's like, dude, there's a million white Fox bodies. And he's not wrong, you know. He's like, do something different, like start new, have a new beginning, like forget that stuff and let's do something totally different. And I'm a really dark color guy. Like, I don't like colors. I don't like bright colors. I don't like reds. I don't like blues. It's just not me. It's like black, white, gray, silver kind of deal. But once he said that to me, I was sold on blue sky. Like, I was sold on them doing the car because he was just flat out like, I'm not painting your car white, dude. Like, it's boring. It sucks, you know? So, but yeah, that's how
So
it
you
started.
appreciated the bluntness there.
Always, you know?
That's
So,
awesome.
so that's how the car eventually started. And it took 4 years to get together. No build.
Nice.
Wow.
Well, that is a very cool story, and I love that there's such an emotional tie-in. And like, I think that just underscores like what a lot of people listening and watching, like they that's how they got into cars, right? Like there's some sort of emotional attachment to that, you know. There's a reason why we all name cars, right? It's because it's sort of humanizing it in a way. It's like it's why you thank your car after you either get in an accident or have like a bad trip, but it got you there. You know, it's very cool to have that sort of connection to cars, and that's part of the reason why I love it too. And I know Chad's the same way. So thank you for sharing that. That's a very awesome story. And now I no longer want your car, as I would never take that away from you ever.
So you mentioned naming cars, man, and I think all cars should have names, right? Like especially like a custom built car. So I used to hear my dad used to tell me stories. And I don't know about you guys if your dads were in the cars or not, but my dad grew up in like the 60s, so street racing, like the old Chevelles and GTOs and all that stuff was like I heard about that stuff my whole life. And he would tell me stories about cars coming from like Newark, New Jersey to race in West Milford and Wayne on 23. Like, oh, there was this 57 Chevy, orange 57 Chevy. The guy called it Super Pumpkin. And one guy, black Chevelle, he named it like Paint It Black after the song. So I was when I got into the middle of this build, I was like, man, I got to name this car. But I knew I had this name in my head for a decade. So I was in 1939. There was a racehorse, like a Triple Crown winner, actual racehorse named War.Admiral. So I actually got the name from a movie, like Seabiscuit, right?
Oh, cool.
So I was watching. Greg's Volvo's named Seabiscuit. That's crazy.
It's perfect.
That's right. It seems slow, but it wins.
Right. That's where the name came from. I was watching it with my wife years ago, and it was like they was like all War.Admiral. I was like, man, that would be such a cool name for like a badass Mustang, like racehorse, all this. So I just held it in my head all these years. But you're gonna name a car War.Admiral, like it's gotta represent, right? It's gotta be something. Like you're not naming like a stock 5-liter War.Admiral. So once the car started to progress, I was like, let's do this. And Jesse, I think at first was like, what? But as the car progressed, we started getting the custom emblems made. It just kind of, came to life.
Well, that's the thing I've noticed with projects. It's not okay. So boosting the Mustang, big deal. But a lot of the little stuff is what kind of gives it personality. So for me, eventually when this is done, I'm going to replace all the FiveO badging with, excuse me, with 4.12 badging, because that was my father's birthday, and he unfortunately passed a couple years ago or what have you. So like, but he's the inspiration for me being into cars. He's the reason I looked Mustang for my big power build, right? Like it would have been pretty dang easy to just slap a turbo on my Lexus, put a better trans in it, and call it a day. But I wanted to get I originally wanted the Corvette because again he had the Vet, and my goal was to have, because he had Parkinson's, so like it was going quick. So I wanted to have him one last drive in something that's modern but from his youth, sort of a thing. So I totally, and like all the little little details is what makes it yours, right? Like right now my car just looked. The only reason it's different from the outside is it has different wheels, right? But I also don't. Well, I do want to give it a pretty crazy livery when it's done. Just kind of my personality, but the little badging and the little subtle things that say this is different. This is something that it's not just a Mustang. It's not just an S550 Mustang with an exhaust or something like that. So I like all the little things. Like I remember talking to Jeff about your car, about the 6.0 badges.
Oh, you don't even know. That is the one thing I question every day of my life. But we'll get into that. Finish what you're saying.
But I remember seeing them, and that actually inspired my thought of, oh, it'd be cool if instead of 5.0, it was 4.12 in that font. And then we started talking about, like, I think EVOD Industries did the badging for you. So we started talking about them and everything like that. And so, like, I totally get that sentiment of you could, because again, if you just paint, I mean, the paint job on your car is insane. I love that color. It's money, no object, the color I would paint any of my cars. and the thought just left my head.
You were talking about the emblems.
Right. Oh, that's what I'm saying. If you didn't have the emblems or what have you, your car's pretty unassuming from the outside. The only indicator that it's something different is that badging, and I don't know. For me, that's stuff I love. I mean, Greg, if he was to move slightly to his left, he'll show you he got the Swedish Moose badging on his car. You know, it's hard to see on the Skype feed or what have you, but and you had the prancing. Did you have the prancing moose stuff on the other one?
I never had the prancing moose, but that's a common thing in the Volvo community. So even the Ferrari with the prancing horse. Well, the Volvo community has a moose because moose are very obviously prevalent in Scandinavia. So if I move this way, you can see the flag right up here. It's got that prancing moose right there. So it kind of looks like the Ferrari logo, but it's a moose instead. So it's like the adopted mascot of the Volvos. And you'll see it on like the front fender badging like that. We just put them on just like Ferraris because we like to think of our Swedish steeds like Ferraris, but they're not, Italian brethren.
And you got it. And you got it in Swedish Racing Green, which is an inside joke. It's basically
which is basically just powder blue.
They call it Swedish Racing Green.
It's cool though because it's you, right? Like it's
right.
Like anytime you have I guess any car, right? Like I'm not going to say your commuter cars, but like if you got like any type of hot rod, I don't care if it's a Honda Civic, like if that's what you're into, like you should be able to park that car in a parking lot, and your boys should know that's your car. Right, you should scream your personality.
Exactly, and that's part of the reason why we all love modding cars, is like to make it uniquely ours, right?
Right. So, Chad, I got to just touch base on those 6.0. Social media is a nasty place, man.
Really? Go on. I've never heard this or don't have firsthand experience with people being idiots.
Holy shit. So I will bet you every single day I have to answer a question about the 6.0 badges. Oh, you ruined that car. It's an LS. You whatever, blah, blah, and not so many nice words. So for anyone who watches this in the future, it is not a Chevy motor. So it's a Dart block 363 with a 78 millimeter turbo. It's a small block Ford. 363 cubic inches is 5.949 liters, equals 6.0. Kind of like the original 5.0 is actually 4.9 liters.
Mm-hmm.
So when people see the 6.0, they're like, LS junk, you ruined that beautiful car, but you ruined it. It sucks. Blah, blah, blah.
Oh my God.
So, no, it's that's the one thing I sometimes question, like, oh my gosh, should I take these things off? I just can't take this anymore. But,
no, leave them. No. Let people be angry about them. Make them think.
Yeah. I mean, obviously, it's a pain in the ass to have to answer that question every day. But on the flip side, it is immediately a talking point about your car. I was talking, I forget who I was talking to, but we were talking about your car. And the first thing he said was, oh, is that the Fox with the 6-liter in it? Like,
right.
You know,
Nice.
it's a talking point, and it makes the car memorable. And the internet's so dumb. Not our chat. Dumb. Very, very intellectual, whether you're watching on Facebook or what have you. But just the comments we see on some of this stuff is Hanson just did a video. I forget what truck it was.
It was the GMC Sierra. It was the new Sierra.
And he had
with the multi-purpose tailgate.
So he, can you fit a sheet of, I think it was plywood or sheetrock. I forget exactly what he was saying. So he's measuring the bed. There was a thread of comments about his tape measure, completely missing the point of him trying to measure the bed and why you would want, has this
but not even just about the tape measure, making fun of him. Yeah. I was like, oh, that's your tape measure? Like that's the point of manhood. Right. We don't need a fucking billet steel made tape measure. Like it works. It measures things. Shut up, you're idiots.
It is unbelievable, the shit that people say. I don't know. It's good and bad, right? We've talked about this on the Asylum podcast a lot too. As much as people hate there is out there too, there's a lot of positives. And I've met some of my best friends met some of my best friends in the world through it, you know. But man, does it wear you down when you get the same stupid comments over and over and over, you know?
Yeah.
Well,
I mean, it almost, if you could figure out a way, just put a little QR code under the badge, just bang, and then there's your explanation. Don't do
Right.
that, by the way.
I
but-
just chalk it up to people
Oh,
needing
yeah.
that lift in their life, unfortunately. Because like if you need to belittle someone on the internet in that manner to feel good about yourself, maybe just reevaluate a little bit there, bro. Like you really need to like take
And
a
it's
step
always
back and
listen, it's always those guys who don't got shit anyways. Like they don't got cars. Like they don't put themselves
Right.
out there.
Yeah,
Like
that's
it's not easy to come on here like you guys do and put your faces for the world to see and talk about things. Like you say a word wrong and people are on top of you, right?
the pronunciation
100%.
comments I
Well-
get on our short form, because I've recently started pivoting and trying to do more short form on interesting motorsport stories, interesting cheating, just cool stuff in general as far as automotive is concerned. And what was it? I was talking about the 24 hours of Le Mans, and they're like, Le Mans, LMAH, question mark, question mark, question mark. It's, what do you want me to say? Le Mans? Le Mans is a Pontiac. Like, Le Mans is the
Right.
race in France.
yeah.
Right.
Come on.
I gotta just real quick, we'll get back to that. I gotta just address Brent's comment too. He said that in the side moldings. So you guys know Fox bodies. I didn't put side moldings on my car. And in the Fox body community,
Right.
that's like a sin, apparently. You know, apparently it's a sin to not have them on there. The car doesn't look complete, blah, 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 blah. But I'm very OCD with stuff. And the aftermarket side moldings on a Fox Body Mustang, they don't stick well. Now, some guys will epoxy them. Some guys will glue them, this, that, and the other thing. And there's a ton of opinions on it. The reason I didn't do it is because they always lift. The aftermarket ones always lift, right? So that's
Right.
why I didn't do it. I didn't want the car to be what it is and then lifted corners on the moldings or something like that. And I like the way it looks.
Yeah.
It is what it is.
I'm a huge fan of your build in the sense that it looks OEM plus. It doesn't look outlandish. It doesn't look, I mean, it looks bad freaking ass, but like it's not, like you said, it's not like over the top with aftermarket parts on the outside. Like it's not like crazy side skirts with big wing and yada yada yada. It's all like insanely OEM plus tasteful, but custom. You can tell it's all custom done. And that's how I love the things that I would do if I had, again, unending money. I would do maybe not a Fox body build, but like something similar to that. Like I wouldn't go with like the most bananas stuff out there. And that's cool on some things. Like if you want to do a bananas build, like, go buy a Lambo and do
Right.
crazy stuff. But like for a Fox body build, I don't, personally, I haven't found anything cleaner than this. And I haven't found anything that I liked better than this. Like I actually really like the look without the side skirts. It's a very cool design element that a lot of people, like in the Fox community, I'm sure, like you said, like it's sort of sacrilege to not put them on. But outside of that community, like I think this, quite frankly, looks better than with the side skirts on. They look cool with the side skirts, but like I like this look a lot better. It looks a lot cleaner to me, in my opinion.
I mean, I agree with you, and that's why I didn't put them back on. The idea of this car, and this I like in all cars, like even if it was a Volvo, right?
Yeah.
I like the
Well,
pro OEM, like you said, OEM plus. Like that was the idea of the car, like custom stuff that's in your face that you don't notice. Like so, if you walk by it and you don't see, like my pinch weld covers, Jesse handmade those. They're the only ones on any
Right.
Fox body in the whole world, and some people don't
Right.
notice them, right? Stuff like that, like my rear diffuser, little subtle things like the shaved locks, just
Yeah.
stuff that's in your face, but you walk by it. That's
Yeah.
what I personally like. I don't like
Same here. And
street.
there's a local meet here. It's called Nights with Car Lights. I met the guy that runs it, but one of his friends, he has an, or I think it was an S13 or an S14, I forget, Nissan, and it's painted in that Millennium Jade, that like classic GTR kind of like like olivey green kind of color. But to that point, he had a really cool thing where he LS swapped it, and he has custom suspension, and it's not like the craziest build, but he had a really unique, cool little thing about it where no one would ever notice it, and it's in the rear suspension. He had the suspension tops painted in Millennium Jade to match the paint on the outside. So I love that you have little details like that no one else would know and see. Like that, again, if I had unlimited like funds, or if I was just doing a custom build in general, that's the kind of little stuff that I would love to do. You have those little things that make it yours and unique to your car.
Right. I mean, to me, that's what makes a car classy, not gaudy. Right. And that's just my opinion. You can go over the top with things and bring it too far.
Yeah.
Who's
100%.
Yeah. Someone is probably a stupid question. Is your car boosted? Yes, it is boosted. It's not a stupid question. It's
very boosted.
It's got a
Always
78.
boost.
Yeah, always boost. If you don't have boost, why do you own a car? Right. No, it's a 78 millimeter VS1 racing turbo on the car. So the car.
That's a question I've had. What kind of power is your car putting out?
So I run off the Holley Terminator X system. It's got multiple tunes. That question is always like a trick question because, and I'll explain that. So when I had the 76 millimeter turbo on the car made 948 wheel with over 1,000 foot-pounds of torque, and that was with the 76 millimeter. That was on C16. The car made with the 76 millimeter. The car makes 804 wheel on 93 pump. Right. I don't drive the car around on that, so it's got multiple tunes. We drive around like a 675 tune.
Mm-hmm.
But now we swapped to a 78 millimeter turbo because the exhaust side of the turbo is where you build a lot of back pressure. Sorry, my voice.
No, please continue about back pressure because I have been on Greg's ass about the turbo in his car about this. So please go.
So here's the thing: like the back pressure is what's going to wreak havoc and create a lot of heat in your engine bay and essentially destroy other things. So the 76 had a 0.95 exhaust side, and I was blowing out manifold gaskets anytime I'd get like above 14 pounds of boost. Also, it was melting things. It actually melted a cylinder one wire just because of the amount of heat that's under there. So we swapped it to a 78 with a 1.25 exhaust so the car could breathe better. All the heat eliminated, no more manifold gaskets. Back pressure is a turbo's worst enemy. I would always want a bigger exhaust side to eliminate back pressure. So your back pressure, technically speaking, again, I'm going to say this and someone may correct me, but I've always been a supercharger guy, and this is the first turbo car I've owned. So I'd be a liar if I said I wasn't still learning as I go, right?
Sure.
But what I've learned about back pressure is it should generally match your boost. You're always probably going to have a little bit of more back pressure than the amount of boost, but you want those two numbers to be as close as possible. That eliminates heat, eliminates manifold gaskets blowing out, all that good stuff.
Right.
So I have not put the car on the dyno with the 78 millimeter.
Okay.
So it made 948 spinning the tires. The tires broke loose. With over 1,000 foot-pounds of torque. With the 76.
So it's got enough.
So yeah, we'll just say I'm pretty positive it'll go over 4 digits.
Nice.
But I generally drive the car around on a 675 tune on low boost, and then on high boost, 805 in that range.
Nice.
Is that
that's
the end?
That's pretty sick.
Is that that adjustability? Is that the reason you ended up going turbo, or was it something else?
It's 100% the reason I ended up going turbo. Now again, I've always been a supercharger guy. It's more what I know.
Right.
But I'll say owning both over the years, a turbo car is way more streetable and more mild mannered, and still have the capability of straight up violence if you want it, than a supercharger. So I could drive this car around like a Honda Civic and never put it in boost, or I could get into it and the thing's just insane crazy.
Yeah.
But also with technology now, like I have a digital dash. Did you guys see that? Yeah. So
Yeah, I don't think we saw it on, but I think we leaned in or like leaned next to it and we're like, oh, nice.
Yeah.
I think it's one of those,
that's all.
like, yeah, like Greg said, one of those like, huh? And then because the rest of the car went here and just disappeared.
Right. So it's a Holly Pro Dash 12.3. That it's all touchscreen, so I can actually adjust my boost on the fly. So I just tap a button and it'll go from whatever tunes I have in the car. We'll call it 675. I tap it, now it'll make 850.
That's awesome.
Just by tapping it like you would tap to open an app. So technology's allowed turbo cars to do all this wild stuff. And I've yet to see that set up on a supercharged car. Not to say that it's not out there somewhere, but
yeah, well, that adjustability of boosts, I really think is fairly modern. The only one don't get me wrong, it's probably all over the place, but I know the Aussies, what is it, the Skid Factory, their YouTube channel, I forget what car they were working on, but the supercharger itself had something in the bypass valve. It was a positive displacement blower. Something with but you could legitimately tell it to run half boost or full boost or quarter boost. Like, it was almost the supercharger equivalent of like a wastegate.
yeah.
So
Say that again, Chad. Just repeat that again.
So I gotta find the car. After the show, I'll send you a link to it. But they're working with the supercharger, and again, I don't know if it was the bypass valve or something completely a valve of some assortment. But the way it worked was somehow it was able to control the amount of boost that was going into the engine. So if it was safe, and I'm making this number up, but just for the sake of example, it made 15 pounds. They could run a 7.5 pound quote unquote tune with it. I watched it. This is over like a year and a half, 2 years ago or something like that. But
it's a centrifugal blower.
It was a
positive, or like a Whipple style
positive displacement blower.
Okay, yeah, I'd like viewers to see that because the only way I know of to do it, and again, someone out there could correct me, but the only way I know of how to do it with a blower, like on the fly like that, would be timing. So I would be interested to see that. If you find it, send it over to me.
Yeah, that was
with a turbo. You have boost controllers and all that stuff where you can manage all that stuff.
Yeah, and with modern the old thing with turbos is spooling them up. With modern turbos now, and especially if you're running actual displacement, 363 for example,
right.
But spooling them up isn't as big of a concern as it was years ago. But yeah, I'll definitely look into it. Again, this was a minute ago. I know it's on the Skid Factory channel, which I love because the guy goes way into detail about a lot of the stuff, whereas opposed to some YouTubers. Don't get me wrong, there's multiple ways to skin that cat, so to speak, right? Right. But he goes into kind of the detail of it because the one guy wasn't a kid content creator who happened to become a mechanic like a lot of the guys out there, or mechanic. I'll put that in quotes because it's sometimes an insult to guys like Jeff and so on.
That's right. We can insult Jeff. He's going to watch this. Let's bust his ball.
But the guy was literally working in a custom car shop, which appeared on another YouTube channel. And I'm like, hey, you work on like a cool car every other week. Make videos about it and you'll make money on it. And that's what he eventually did. And he's got a unique Australian personality and what have you. But he goes into a lot of the detail, a lot of the stuff, and it's what makes it interesting. But I'll definitely find that. Yes. Again, I don't know the exact details, but I'm pretty confident it was internal to the supercharger how he was controlling boost.
Yeah, I'd be curious to see that because by my only knowledge of it would be turbo. But I got to go backwards because you said something about Greg and you've been on him about turbos.
Yeah, so...
And back pressure.
So...
What's going on there?
Greg went to the track, bone stock, ran a 13.3. Put a downpipe and a tune on it, which isn't crazy or what have you. But, Greg, you can shed more light on this, but the car seems to be generating more heat now than power.
Yeah, so the way that this car is, it's a V60 Polestar from 2016. It's got a transverse mounted inline six. and they only did that for 2015 and 2016. The 2017 and above has a 4-cylinder, but it's twin charged, so it's got both a supercharger and a turbocharger. So it's got one to fill gaps down low, and one to keep pulling up top, which is pretty cool. It's cool. It's cool technology, and my wife's XC90 has the same engine in it, and it's pretty cool. I mean, I mean, the XC90 is huge. It's like over 6,000 pounds, but it's as quick as a GTI in 0 to 60, basically. So pretty cool technology and pretty cool engine layout. But this thing's cool. It sounds great. I ran a 13.38 as my best bone stock, and then a 13.35 as my best with the downpipe and the tune. So what I'm guessing is that, and these cars are known to be pretty maxed from factory. The turbo's really high strung. It's an updated wheel, so it's not a full updated turbo, but it is like a bit of a difference. And there's obviously like a different tune to get a bit more power on it just from Polestar itself. So it's one of those things where like the car is definitely generating a lot of heat. Like specifically in these, the heat soak is known to be really bad. So it for sure 100% needs to have the heat dissipated a bit. And Chad's been on me about just like, even if you just get a bigger turbo, that will not only give you more power, but it'll also help with the back pressure. It'll help with the heat dissipation, and it'll help with basically just overall drivability of the car. Because it's less high strung, and the turbo is less taxed at that point.
Yeah, so I don't think he's wrong. And you don't even need.
I agree. He's not wrong.
Every issue. I can honestly say this truthfully, minus a few things. And my car was a full every nut and bolt build. Like you guys have seen it. The issues I've had with that car since the build were all heat related, all due to turbo, back pressure. Period. And almost every issue I've had.
And that's a Volvo thing, is to put a turbo too small for expansion, we'll call it.
Yeah.
But even then, all of the Volvos we've had, I think this is the same for the V70. All the Volvos we had, when we put them on the dyno, they made significantly more torque than horsepower. So they were running.
Yes.
And from what I understand is, one of the guys was telling me it's bigger. So my C30 had a turbofold, so I couldn't get a bigger back housing without replacing the whole turbo setup because it's all integrated into the exhaust manifold. But I think I was talking to Rich Forsyth. He's like the dude when it comes to Volvos. But he was saying, he's like, yeah, Volvo undersizes everything to make them snappy and responsive for the general public because you idiots are like 0.003% of their buyers. So they don't care and everything. So, but it's...
Yeah.
But it... So here's the thing. I joke around with Greg about this a lot because you think bigger turbo, bigger boost, bigger problems kind of a thing. But just for me, and I'm by no means an expert, but just for like me, it's put a bigger back housing on there and the car will just run smoother. Yep. You have a 3-liter.
100%.
You have a 3-liter. It's not like we're talking about some small turbo 4-cylinder that's not moving a shit ton of air. And even so, the biggest issue, and I'll concede to Greg on this, is when it comes to tuning, it's not like my car, where I call up John Lund and be like, yo, I need a tune, and then it's a couple runs on the dyno and it's perfect, right? Greg, I think you had to go overseas to get your tune.
Yeah, that's the other part of the problem, and I've made several things about Volvo tuning. Is like, look, Volvo is a car company that wants to sell cars. They're not pandering to enthusiasts. Whereas Ford is well aware of their enthusiast crowd. Like, they make products specifically for their enthusiast crowd, i.e. Mustangs, i.e. the Ford GT, i.e. the GT350 and GT500. Like, they understand that there is an enthusiast. Yeah, but you know what?
You know what I'm hearing? You know what I'm hearing, Greg? You know what I'm hearing out of this? Coyote swapped the Volvo.
It's been suggested. I just say
that's also.
Well, here's the crazy thing about that engine bay, because it is a transverse straight 6, right? So 3-liter transverse straight 6. Now it does save some I think so if you take from the end of the transmission to the end of the engine, it's actually narrower than the 5-cylinders because the accessories are on the back of the engine, kind of like an old VR6. And
you probably could fit a Coyote
but
in the engine, but
I mean,
there's plenty of room up front.
Don't get me wrong, though. Coyotes
Let's do it. You could definitely fit a Godzilla.
Oh, and that's actually
drink down.
Yeah, well,
couldn't be a better transition to the next topic.
I was good, yeah, because I was going to say the Coyote I think is wider than the old 429 big blocks.
Yeah,
just because of how massive
it's wide. Sure.
Yeah, which it's almost like he read the brief, even though I didn't send it. Sorry about that. But Greg, it's funny because Greg recently did a reel where the pissed off version of the Godzilla is now a crate motor that you can buy from Ford.
Yeah, so
and I've thought about it a lot of times.
it's a cool thing because the motor that we're talking about, for those that are unaware, so Ford a couple of years ago came out with a 7.3 liter V8 called the Godzilla engine, and in its base form it makes 430 horsepower, which is, you know, not a ton of power for a 7.3 liter V8. However, or at least a modern, you know, large literage V8. However, people are basically getting, with that engine, naturally aspirated without any boost. People are forging the internals and getting 800 power, 800 naturally aspirated, which is just bananas. Naturally aspirated.
It's an intriguing motor. It's a real intriguing motor. That with a Harrop on it is something to talk about. Greg, yeah. I just address a couple of the comments real quick.
Yeah, go for it.
I don't mean to cut you off, but it just drives me nuts to leave people hanging with comments.
No, we try to get the chat as much as possible, so please chime in. Absolutely.
So Steve said, Tom, will you be at Carlisle next year? Yes, Steve. Carlisle's a must for me because I'm a judge there. So I judge at Carlisle Ford Nationals every year. Whether my car will be there.
Will you be at Carlisle Import and Performance Nationals, which is the big Volvo one?
They're prejudiced against American cars at that meet.
I don't know. It depends on how many views this video gets when I post it. No.
That's right. I've never been to that show. For shifting lanes. Let's go.
I've never been to one of those import shows up there, but yes, as far as Ford Nationals, I'll be there for sure because I'm a judge. Nice. I have a choice whether the car's there or not. Jesse, you see Jesse in there? That Greg and Chad is one of my co-hosts on the FiveO Asylum podcast.
Welcome, Jesse. Welcome. Thanks for joining, dude.
He's all right. I mean, he was in the Navy, so he's a little, you know what I'm saying? But besides that, I love him to death, man. I can't imagine doing the podcast without him. He's one of my favorite people. But, speaking of imports at Carlisle, I should go to that. And not to get away from the Godzilla.
The cool thing is it's import and performance. So there are a bunch of domestics. It's mostly an import show, but there are a bunch of domestics that show up. Chad went, they have an exhaust competition the year before this, a GT500 one. So like it's a cool show, honestly.
That exhaust competition is just, don't get me started. You mentioned it to rile me up, but the fact that I
always do because I made it to the finals and you did not, so that will always be lorded over you from here until the end.
A Honda lawnmower made. Oh well, it was a CRX, but
that CRX sounded good. Don't even lie.
Above 7,000 RPM, anything below that, it sounded like at. But the point I'm making is
it was like a racing CRX. It was a good sounding car.
I know Steve loves Hondas and everything, but. I don't hate on it. It was one of those things. It wasn't even that. Like there were cars in that final. It's like I can't even hear it. What is the point? And it was supposed to be like tone and quality of sound. And I was like, my car sounds, yeah.
Your car does sound good. I'll be honest. It does sound.
I will say this. It has a little bit of rasp, which is one of my to-do lists. Is to sort of lower the volume a smidge, and get a little smoother sound out of it. Because as I've mentioned before, I live in a townhome development, and one of my neighbors, thank God, his son loves my car. Every time it starts, he runs out on the deck and watches me leave. It's really cool.
That's cool
because
That's cool.
That's the next generation, right? It's really, really awesome. But I was talking with him a few weeks ago, and he goes, "Yeah, he knows when your car starts. He can hear it, and the ground shakes." I'm like, "Oh crap!" It's just like, I'm like, "Come on, it's dual overhead cam. It doesn't have a thump. It can't be that bad." But
Do you guys ever go to you guys go to generally like all car shows, or you just kind of pick your genres? Like you guys are so across the board, it's hard for me to pinpoint like questions as far as that's concerned. Because like for me, like I'm going to Ford Nationals, right? Like I'm not going to
Right.
Chevy Nationals, like But here's the thing: like when I go to good guy shows, I like drawing inspiration from other genres, especially the import world,
Right.
because they get a lot of hate, and I'll probably get my balls busted for saying this on my Facebook group. But listen, they have a lot of good ideas, and some of those cars are wickedly fast. So I like drawing inspiration from that stuff, but I don't go to a lot of their shows. It's more like YouTube stuff.
so we try to get into as much as we can. This past year was nuts for me, personally. Just so much stuff. So Carlisle Imports was really the only show that I could get to. It's on my list to do more of, just because car shows are cool and specific to what we do. Car shows, I mean, it's from Carlisle. We got, I think, just in short form and one short form video every day, we got 2 months worth of content. So it's from like a business perspective and a car guy perspective, it's kind of the best of both worlds. It's just Greg has 2 kids. Like I said, I passed this summer switching jobs, switching careers, all that other sort of stuff.
Yeah.
It was time just disappeared. But it's
Yeah, I get it.
Yeah, but based on what we do, we try to make it to as much as we can across the board. Just like to Chad's point, like it doesn't matter what show we go to, we can get content out of it and also have a good time. Like even if we go to just a local show, we can get 1 to 2 weeks worth of stuff, just filming real quick, 14 to 20 cars, and just quick stuff. It takes 2 minutes to get the shots we need. Then we do a
So
green
do you guys
talking
do you
head
go
on
there?
stuff, and then that's it. And then we can just chat and have fun the rest of the time.
Do you go there for specifically for content, or do you go there for inspiration for your own builds, or is it a combination of both?
For me, it's content right now, just to continue to build the stuff. But I also gravitate to the things that I like. So it does lend itself to the content is there, but it's also sort of I like these things, so I want to make that part of either my car or a future build, and we have that sort of like video log of the things that I saw. So maybe a little bit of both, mostly for content, but for me at least, mostly for content, a little bit of inspiration.
How about you, Chad?
For me, it's not specific. I would have to say if I had a reason, it was content driven, because that's what I would spend a good chunk of my time doing. But I do like seeing cool. So it's not that I'm seeking inspiration out, but there's a lot of cool stuff that it's like, maybe not on my Mustang, because I kind of have that finished in my head at the moment. But for a future project,
you're lying to yourself.
Well,
you're lying.
I have this is where I want to get to, and then I can look at others, like, because eventually I do want to get into, like I said before, I have car project ADD. Greg will tell you this is probably the one project I've stuck with the longest. I think the Volvo is the longest, but just because so the Mustang, I had Jeff and Jesse do, well, pretty much just Jeff. Although Jesse did cut the hole in my hood, because
he has his hands in it.
Literally had his hand in my hood. No, I have a centrifugal supercharger, and it was hitting it was rubbing on the roof. So we think that's why I was down on power at the track, because centrifugal superchargers on the Coyote, as I'm sure you're aware of, but they are prone to false knock. And adding the hitting on the hood, we think we were getting a lot of false knock and just pulling a crap ton of timing. Unfortunately, I wasn't data logging at the time, because I don't think that way yet, because I've been to the track a bunch. I don't go to the track every weekend, so I'm not thinking, I should data log just in case something breaks, right?
Right.
So, but I do, I want to get the car to the point where I have some slight body modifications I want to do to it. Again, if you've followed international motorsport, I want to do some variation of the Lark livery on my car. I just love that contrast. But most importantly, I want to get the new bumper on the car. I have a carbon fiber roof that is pretty much directly under me in my garage right now that has to go on the car next year. I don't care. Like, it's been too long. But get it to a point where,
Many years.
because as you know, you reach a phase in the build where it's not like a $500 or a $200 part is now $500, and now that $500 next step is $1,000, $2,000, or the labor. Like, the roof itself was only like $1,000, but the labor to put
It's
it
the
in
labor.
is $3,000, and that's why with the Mustang I had Jeff and those guys do all the work because of the scarring from doing all the work on the Volvo. I get it. I did all except for the suspension. I am terrified of spring compressors. I like almost irrationally so. But apart from the suspension, I did all of the work to that car. From basically full exhaust all the way down to intake manifold, intercooler, the whole nine. Everything to that car I did, adjusting the like all of that stuff, and it sucked all of the joy out of it, because not only was I
Right.
like, I love working on cars. It was one of the things I looked forward to with my father. And hey, anyone out there, and if you're looking for a good Christmas present for your car, guys, in the description we have a link to our merch store, and there we have our new shirts that say "You think you can hurt me?" I used to hold the flashlight for my father, so t-shirts and stuff. There.
That's a good one.
So
That's a good one.
but doing it as content. So creating one of the ugly things about when you're filming yourself doing work to the car, it almost doubles the length of the project. So like an hour job becomes 2 hours and everything. And then there's deadlines, right? I have to have my video out on Wednesday every week. So I got to come to some sort of conclusion or finish whatever I'm doing. And then on top of that, I was using the shop at work, and I had to have my car either rolled out of the way or drive itself out of the way by 5 o'clock the next morning. So it wore on me. So when it came to the Mustang, we had done really, really well. I had some money lying around. I was like, you know what? I could do this for the next stages, but I might as well. You spend 5 minutes around Jeff. You're like, okay, no one else should touch my car. I shouldn't even touch this Coyote. He can do this blindfolded and left-handed.
He does have a way.
Upside down.
He does have a way of making you think that, right?
Yeah.
And
I mean, it's to Chad's point. It's a very different proposition when you're trying to make content on a car as opposed to just doing the work yourself for the pleasure of doing it. So if you're doing it as a day job, that's fine, because you can make a video out of something and not finish it. So, but if you're in Chad's position, like he had to have his Mustang in a shop at work, do the thing, get it finished, get it out of there in a certain time period, as opposed to just like leaving it in a garage that you're just working on it at home on. That's a very different scenario. And it's like Chad said, it sort of sucks the joy out of it in that respect, because you're on a schedule. And like the last thing you want to be doing is, if you're working on a car for pleasure, is be on a schedule. So it's if you're making YouTube videos, like, and if you're listening to this and you're young and you want to make YouTube videos, do it, but go into it with the knowledge that if you're gonna do it, go for it, but focus on that only. And if you're young enough to have that luxury of just doing it, and either living with parents or being even in high school or middle school or whatever, and want to work on cars, like just do it and focus only on that, and make sure that you're doing it the way you want to do it, and not necessarily pigeonhole yourself into doing it later and like, it'll get done eventually, or I got to get this done and that done. Like, no, just focus on the car, focus on the actual work, and enjoy the work. That's the biggest part. If you're not enjoying it, then don't do it.
It's funny you guys are talking about this, because I have the pleasure of being friends with quite a few YouTubers through the car and the podcast and car shows and all that. So I really do understand what it takes to do that. and a couple good friends of mine, um, who are have big YouTube channels. They also have a podcast. Will you mind me saying the name of it or no?
Oh yeah, go ahead.
So the podcast is it's kind of like they also are a Fox Body podcast, but they're good friends of ours, so it's not like competition. Like we collab and do all that stuff. It's rolling in my 5.0 podcast. They just had a good friend of ours on, Rob Miller, and the back half, it was like a 4-hour podcast. It was like their longest ever. And the back half of that podcast, they talked about just this very thing, this week actually, in great detail. So if you guys get bored, I know, Greg, you're not a huge podcast listener, but Chad, if you ever get bored, check out that Rolling in My 5.0 podcast, this week's, and listen to the second half of it, because they talk about YouTube and filming and all that stuff in a lot more detail than we've just
No,
talked about.
that's definitely awesome and definitely something to absolutely check out. Great, like a lot of it's funny. I'll send Greg links to and timestamps to some of the podcasts I listen to, because a lot of the podcasts I listen to are not car based. Just it's one of those things where, like, I've been lucky enough to work in two of my biggest passions over the course of my life. Obviously, cars, and then I spent about 15 years working in the golf industry. And it's weird, and I never really understood it until pretty recently, within the last year or so. But if you got to be careful, because there's one way to kill your passions is to work in it. Is kind of a thing. And like, there were days where I had free access to pretty much name a golf course in New Jersey, but there were days where I didn't want to look at a golf course because I'd spent all day like that. Like, so like car stuff,
Right.
I'll watch some car YouTube stuff. I'll listen to some, like I've listened to a couple of your guys' stuff, but I like listening to others.
You should listen to all of our stuff. I gotta throw that in there.
Sure, right as soon as you put 30 hours in a day, that'll be perfect.
I know.
No, I try to simply from a support creators. So other creators I know, I try to watch their stuff, and at the very least, get the like, comment, etc. The whole YouTube thing. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. By the way, if you're watching this on YouTube, no, I'm just kidding. So
no, finish what you were saying before I rudely interrupted you.
But what I really love is listening to other content creators who are in different spheres talk about YouTube and content creation as a whole, because it kind of gives you fresh ideas and how to do things slightly different. I'll be 100% honest, because I'm pretty confident he will never ever actually watch this show. But again, those sort of story time reels that I've been doing, straight up inspired by the Fat Electrician on YouTube. He does historical stuff. If you're into history, it's a great watch. And even if you're not into history, it's interesting as hell, because he's one of those guys who can make pretty much any topic interesting. I love watching him, and he's on a podcast called the Unsubscribe Podcast, and they pretty much have a rotating door of creators. And every now and again, they'll start like really, like, not talking content, but diving into it. And I think I shared it with Greg about the insight on that, because for me, the car genre has kind of, when it comes to YouTube, right? There's 100% a formula out there. How many channels go, okay, here's our build, here's this thing. Oh my gosh, we have a deadline. Like everything's a deadline, whether it be like a SEMA build or I got to go do this, right? Because it adds drama, which gets eyeballs,
right.
Unfortunately.
I was just gonna say SEMA. SEMA's the big one.
Yeah, these guys talk about all that stuff in great length, and their YouTube channels, the Infamous Project and Castle Customs, right?
So
great guys, good friends of mine, but they really dive into that in the second part, and I think you guys would like it. And here's the thing about YouTube, and it's not my thing. Like, you're never gonna see me a YouTube channel like, hey guys, welcome to my channel. It's just not who I am. But I will say this, and it is the truth. One, how do I put this? In our genre and a lot of car genres, it's becoming saturated because of this right here, right? Like anybody can anybody can make a video now and post it.
Oh, and this is
like that.
this is the best consumer based camera you can buy right now. Is
Right.
on the back. If you have a phone that is 3 years old or newer, this camera is better than any GoPro. It's better than most camcorder. Like what you can do with this, and everybody has one of these. You know, everybody wants to be a content creator, and they have access to do
Well,
it.
That's what I always sort of go back to is like one of the biggest car YouTubers, and everybody knows his name, or at least everybody should at this point, is Doug DeMuro. Started out at Jalopnik, you know, big I'd say top 5, maybe top 3 automotive YouTuber as far as subscribers are concerned and total views. He literally films on a Sony Handcam 4K and his iPhone. All
Right.
he's ever done. And like that should just speak volumes for you don't need fancy equipment to be successful. But it also, Tom, to your point, like it lends itself to like, well, if you have this, you can be a YouTuber or you can be
Right.
a podcaster or you can be this, that, and the other thing for media these days, which is both a blessing and a curse. You can do this, but you also have to have sort of a personality and be good or a good voice or good ideas or something. You can't just get this and do it and be successul at it.
Well,
That's
here's the
not
thing,
how it
Greg.
works.
Here's the thing. Like they touch on it as well about well, you have to be as yourself, man.
Right.
Right. You can't come on. Like in our podcast, we're very much ourselves. It's not PG-13. I say what I say. If there's things that, listen, I'll just say, like, I do not like Celine wings. How do you think that goes over in the Fox community, right?
Probably.
But I'm going to
poorly.
voice it, and I'm going to voice it, and I'm going to say it.
But putting yourself out to a bunch of people, fakeness or holding back will immediately either you'll see it in views, not having any because people are going to see you as quote unquote disingenuous, and or people are just going to be like, bro, like you're full of shit. So
Right.
I totally get it.
You have to
And-
be true to your. You have to be true to yourself.
And not for nothing, the most successful
100%.
YouTube channels out there, and I'm not talking about the biggest, but a lot of your big YouTube channels, guys are on one side. Like it's not, oh, let me just try to please everyone. Heck no.
Right.
I'm going to be me. You're going to like it, you're going to hate it. And at the end of the day, I'd rather have, like we were talking earlier, I'd rather have 1,000 engaged, gonna watch my stuff followers than 10,000 people who kind of saw something or like, oh, that's kind of cool, and then never thought of you again. You know, it's
Right.
be memorable is kind of the thing, and it's
Yeah.
it's a talent.
And people see right through it. Like people see right through fake. You know.
Oh, 100%.
Hey guys, welcome to my channel. I love everything, and this is great, and that's great. People know fake, man. Like people aren't stupid. So
Yeah.
you know,
What-
if you're gonna do it, have a niche, be you, and chances are you'll be successful.
Yeah. One channel that I will bring up, and I think it holds true for a couple other people, is Shmee150, who's his name is Tim. He's in the UK, and people just hate him because he's overly positive. He is very unlikable in certain aspects for people to see, but you know, the way and I respect the guy a lot because he's been on a lot of podcasts and talked about like Shmee150 is basically his character, and he's not like really quiet about it. And he's like, look, like that's a person that I portray on my YouTube channel that just like owns all these cars and loves it. He's a very successful businessman outside of just YouTube too. So he has money to buy like very high end cars and things like that. This or the other thing. But you know, he's always gone on and said like, look, that's my persona essentially. I'm Tim otherwise, but Shmee150 is my YouTube channel. That's my persona, and I do it in this overly positive way. But that's how I view that part of my life. And if you watch him on other podcasts and things that he kind of talks about it, he's much more subdued. He's not this like super always kind of energetic thing. He just understands that like that's what sells on YouTube because that's what people kind of gravitate to, like Mr. Beast. You know, if you look at Jimmy and how he portrays himself on podcast that he's on or wherever he is, he's just like, oh yeah, you know, whatever, I can do whatever I want. But on his channel, he's always like, this is the craziest thing ever. He's like, it's always energetic, always this,
Well,
that,
it
and the other
depends
thing.
on the field you're in, because that
Yes,
energy,
yes.
that level of energy is, so a Mr. Beast level of energy. We see our demographics, right? We happen to land in that like 20 to 35 or
Right.
20 to 40 range. His demographic is probably half that old. So you have
Yeah,
to carry,
his demographic probably skews 13 to 20.
you have to
probably.
carry that energy. To both of your points, when it comes to kind of YouTube, and we are by no means the authority on it or whatever. We're still kind of finding our way. We've really hunkered down and focused pretty much strictly on short form because that has been highly successful for us, both financially and as a growth medium.
Yeah.
But if you you can play a character if you are talented enough to do that. If I would make an argument that the guys who do that over the top characterization would be pretty dang good actors if they actually put their mind to it.
Yeah,
I've always maintained that one of the best ways, if you're trying to impart energy, because again, if you sit there and you're kind of monotone and everything's like this, and today we're going to do this, you have every 5 seconds you got to keep that viewer or listener in podcasting. I'm assuming is similar, although I'm guessing you have a little bit more rope.
With what, podcasting?
As far as keeping the retaining the listener or something like that.
So here, can I just touch on that before you go any further?
Go right ahead, man.
So I got experience with both, right? Like I've done a ton of YouTube features on my car. Like some of them have gotten millions of views, hundreds of thousands of views, whatever. And I find podcasting, when it's just straight audio, actually harder with the gaps. And I'll tell you why. Because when people are watching YouTube, like you and I could pause, like right now. They got something to look at.
Right.
That pause on the radio, that 1 second pause I just took, sounds like 5 seconds.
Oh no, you're 100% right there. No, that is an excellent point.
To keep it flowing, you almost have to be thinking 5-10 seconds ahead, and that's again probably why you see me leading into a lot of questions with you guys, or you'll see me jump on you. I don't do it on purpose.
No. It's totally understandable because you're only using YouTube is 2 senses: eyesight, hearing. Podcasting, radio for that matter, talk radio for that matter, it's 1 sense. So there's nothing filling any gaps other than someone speaking. And I know that's actually, I didn't think of that, but that's very, I don't want to say obvious, but at any rate, before you start seeing steam come out of my headphones, but
you get what I'm saying.
No, I totally.
Actually, I got a question, Chad.
Yes, sir.
I've been to ask you this earlier, and not to jump all around, but just these things pop into my head. The when you because you guys do so many different kinds of cars, like you'll feature anything. That's cool.
Oh, 100%,
right? Or you guys
100%.
I mean, you'll feature a stock F-150.
Yeah, well, I mean, our main channel is literally a consumer advice channel. Like every week, and for like 5 or 6 months over the summer, or I'm sorry, early 2023, Hanson, who does all of our reviews, he at least has one new car every week. He doesn't need to have a car other than to have a car of his own. Oh, the way it's set up is that the fleet companies are dropping a car off every Tuesday at whatever time, and he just goes through and reviews everything, whatever we can get our hands on. Because it might not be exciting, but a Kia Santa Fe is more likely you're going to get people Googling that brand new, and you're going to get them Googling it in 2 years when it comes off a lease, right? And that's kind of it, because most of our viewership comes from outside of subscribers. So it's all SEO.
Well, that's what I was going to ask you about your viewership. When you feature certain cars, do you see drops? Right? Do you see trends with certain vehicles versus others?
So believe it or not, some of our best videos are on vehicles I wouldn't really bat an eye at, kind of a thing. You know, totally the commuter car, totally the family car. And for whatever reason, they catch the algorithm and they go. Some of the stuff where you think, the Mach 1, that's really, really cool. But by the time we get it, what can we say or do with it? Because again, these are press cars, so it's not as much as I would have loved for Hanson to meet me at the drag strip and let's find out, what's quicker or something. They kind of frown on you tracking these press cars, right? So it's like, what do we do that's different? And those cars are actually some of our less on the main channel. The main channel is consumer advice, so we're not talking to me or you or Greg. We're talking to, your wife, Greg's wife, your coworker or something like that. It's so that's the thing. Shifting Lanes Garage gives us the freedom to focus more enthusiast, and the biggest trend we've noticed across our existence is when Greg got his first V70R Polestar, that hit something, and that's what initially blew us up, relatively speaking. And Volvo content was the content. Yeah, and that's where I'm pretty sure if you ask anyone in chat right now how they found us, it was Volvo based.
That's what I remember you guys starting out of 100%. 100%.
Yeah.
And Greg, Greg is more into it than I am. I always thought the C30s were cool. I've been a fan of hot hatchbacks. My first car was a Ford Focus hatchback that I almost immediately started modifying. My first really massive, big burnout was in that car. Ironically enough, in front of Greg. So, but I've always had a soft spot for hot hatchbacks. And this isn't a slight on Volvo. Like, chat, you have to understand this. But outside of that, there's the 850Rs were kind of cool. Greg's V70 was kind of cool. His Polestar is kind of cool. Like, they had a bunch of in my opinion, kind of cool stuff. But when the opportunity came around to have a Mustang with a V8 that goes to 7,500 without really breaking a sweat, I jumped on it. Because again, if you're not genuine like you talked about before, or you're not enjoying what you're doing, creating content becomes incredibly difficult in the aspect of getting people to watch. They don't want to watch it. Some person like in chat doesn't want to go and be like, man, Chad's got a new Volvo video, I can't. And I look like someone just walked in and kicked my kitten, right? Like there's no, like, that being genuine.
Yeah.
That sort of thing. So we noticed the drop pretty significant when I got rid of, I shouldn't say significant, but when I got rid of the C30 or it sort of got removed from the channel. But I'm so much happier with not having to, I've never been fake. I've always been, at worst or best, whatever you want to call it, a characterization of myself. So I'm already kind of a big personality in general. Greg will kind of attest because he's known me for damn near 30 years.
Nah, super boring. What a loser. Lame.
I was never the guy who's going to be like, if you told me in high school that I was going to sit in front of a camera and talk to people, I would have told you were nuts, right?
Oh, bro.
Yeah.
You and I are on the same
I would have
page
told
there,
you
for
were
sure.
nuts.
Yeah.
I struggled for a large part, and in still some parts of my life, with social anxiety. But now I have a platform to talk. I have something to talk about, and again, busting balls, like the whole turbo thing with Greg, solely 100%, and the input is invaluable, but busting his chops, I've been on his ass about that for forever. So it's like, that's my personality. So just bust chops, have fun. And when you see it, so when it comes out next week, our drag strip video, you will see that. And it's not that I'm not being me. It's the the things I would have said quietly to get a laugh out of Greg, I'm now saying loudly and with a lot more energy to try to get a laugh out of the viewer. You know what I mean? So,
Right.
so that's. And Anthony, who comes in late, just goes, Greg needs a bigger turbo.
I would like to address the comment from Jesse Barrett, whoever the hell that is. Sounds like a real big loser. Fox
Who's
bodies
that
are
guy?
overrated escorts. I agree. And we're ending stream. Thank you. Good night.
I never even heard of that. Who's Jesse Barrett? I never even heard of that dude.
I don't know. Sounds like a big loser. I'm not entirely sure.
Sounds like a guy would paint his car shit brown.
Oh my gosh.
If you don't know, that is Jesse from Blue Sky, and he is a freaking legend. So thanks for joining, Jesse. Good to see you, brother.
So,
Yeah,
just
dude. We talked quite a bit about you tonight, buddy.
That's right.
all positive.
Yeah.
But real.
Yes, apart from that last comment, it actually was all positive.
So,
yes.
He knows I'm only messing with him.
So real quick, just before we move on, I did want to kind of touch on Chad. I mean, having a radio guy here, there's not the usual like, all right, so let's go to chat to make sure we have something to talk about, kind of a thing. But where was I totally lost my place now. Ryan asks, Chad, what was the rough cost of putting a blower on your car? Is it centrifugal or positive displacement? Funny you should ask that. The short answer is a lot. The long answer is it was about $6K for the supercharger kit. It was another about $2K for the fuel system. Now, you can get cheaper fuel system, but I wanted to. Again, this goes back to Jeff has a way of saying, well, you could do it this way and it'll be fine. But if you want it to be safe, do it this way. With the
Don't do a cheap fuel system if you're going to add boost.
Right.
It's just not worth the headache.
Right.
You're going to end up changing it twice.
At that point, it's better to have too much
fuel. The last
fuel.
thing you want when you're building a car is to not have enough fuel to put down
put
the power into the engine.
What I was saying is the way. So Vortex sells a kit that's about $6,000. That is everything, and from what I understand, it works. But I ended up getting a slightly smaller pulley than they would sell normally. Obviously, more boost, more fuel demands.
Later, Jesse.
You need more. So I converted it from a returnless to a return style fuel system. But that's kind of and then about $900 tune from Lund Racing if you can get a device. That was kind of the basic cost of it. And then clutch and flywheel, again, you can go tons of different routes. Everything in that car was the best part for the job. So the fuel system, the best part for the job. The clutch and flywheel was from Mantic. They're twin disc. It's Carrera metallic puck style. Everything. But the basics, that'll get you there. You might need to do axles or what have you. Mine, and I did a video on this breaking down every single part that's in the car. It's up on Shifting Lanes Garage if you guys want to check this out. But the long way of saying it is, it was $29,000 in parts. Just parts and about $8 or $9K in labor. But you're talking supercharger install, the oil pump gears, crank sprocket gear, fully built transmission, which was about $4,500 all in, carbon fiber drive shaft, Ford Performance Racing axles, the Stop the Hop kit from Steeda, the full kit, which is also a subframe relocation kit, how nerdy you want to get into it, and a whole mess of other stuff that I'm not even thinking about. Wheels, tires, more tires. So it's like everything else, depending on what you want to do. So if you want to go, like Whipple will sell you a complete kit for a lot less than that. But if you have a manual, I think we've talked about this, Ryan, in the past, but I think you have an automatic. So like the whole transmission build is not necessarily something you're going to have to really worry about. And if it's a 2018 or older, depending on how much boost you plan to run, the fuel system's pretty much already there because those are DFI. But it's like everything else, right? You can get you can do, and I'm not saying you can cheap out by getting cheap parts. I'm not saying that. But there's the budget-friendly version where maybe you don't get the big number, but you get decent power, more power than you'll ever need on the street. And then there's the Chad method of, yeah, I'm putting a supercharger on it, which was $6K. I'm going to need $23,000 in parts more for it. So,
well, it's a rabbit hole.
lot.
It's just the nature of building a car with the kind of power yours has, right?
Right.
You just have to expect that to happen.
right. And it's to a lesser extent, but when you're building a race car, you will always find the weakest link. And
yeah,
right.
I built my car knowing
You're not gonna
that
just slap a turbo on something and make 8,000 horsepower and call it a day. That's just not.
I built
real.
my car to such an extent that the next weakest link requires more power, and I'm not going more power anytime soon. 705 at the tire is fine. I got to, like I said, coilovers, finish the bodywork, paint or wrap. Probably a wrap just because you can always get another one, and that's good for content.
wraps intrigue me. I'm starting to like wraps more and more.
Wraps are cool. The only thing I would say that the only ding I would give against wraps is that if you have imperfections in your paint or you have a lot of orange peel, wraps accentuate it more. So if you have perfect paint and you put a wrap on it, it will be awesome because you can change the color of your car if you really wanted to without having a lot of imperfections or like an orange peel effect or just weird things happening. So your car would be an ideal candidate for that because it has an excellent grade of paint and an excellent grade of attention to detail underneath the wrap. If you slap it on like a Ford Escape, you're going to have orange peel, and the wrap will have an orange peel as well because it's just a general paint from an OEM it's literally a set of primer, set of paint, and a clear coat, and there's not much to it other than that.
I like Chad's thought about it though, how he could change it for content and all that stuff. Like,
yes,
that's good thought.
Yeah, and that's why you see a lot of big YouTubers like just changing up wraps here and there and all the time, or like becoming friendly with a wrap shop, and then the third wrap is free or the second wrap is free because you brought me more business. So like it's good in that sense, but like I don't know. I'm in both camps. I like the wrap. I've done it on a car, and it's very cool to be able to do that. But there is something to be said about a really, really good paint job on a car. And
I mean, you
just
can't,
having that
can't be paint, but there is also something about hearing like a rock chip or hearing a rock just kind of hit your bodywork with paint.
That's
then there's hearing it with a wrap on it, because the other upshot of a wrap is it does protect your paint if it's done properly.
Yeah,
right. So
and you can get like an Expel or whatever clear paint protection film and put it over everything, which will help protect, which is great. But that also costs the same as a wrap. If you want to do your full car, a good wrap will cost you between $4,000 to $5,000.
They're not exactly cheap.
So will a clear coat, like a clear bra, on a full car. Like a full car will cost $3-4 grand. So it's
right,
it ain't cheap.
$4 grand versus you take your car to say, I don't know,
20,000.
Pick a good hot rod shop. Anyone in chat know of any? Say you take it to Blue Sky, right? I had a quote to paint
Blue Sky,
paint 2/3 of the Mustang because originally the plan for the bodywork was to replace the entire front clip, but was 10,000-15,000 just for that. And then to paint the whole car, I'm guessing is, like you said, Tom, $20K. So
I'm telling you right now, that's what I have. $20,000. The days of 6,000-7,000 paint jobs are long gone.
I mean, so that's like you can find that, but it's at Mako.
Well,
right, you're not going to get quality,
right. You're going to get
right.
I mean, no, you're not getting a good paint job. No, you're getting a paint job.
So,
that's about it.
But
you can get 4 wraps for the price of one paint job.
True.
And
True.
it's
What I have learned is that everyone's standard is different, right? So some guys will be
Yes.
like, "You pay 20,000 for a paint job? You're crazy. You're out of your mind." To them, if it's shiny, glossy, and new, it's good, right? So
Right.
I mean, everyone's got a different level.
Yeah.
I mean, it's
Well, it's the same.
everything.
It
Everything
depends
in
on the
cars.
product, right? It's the same thing with wine. $2 Chuck is going to taste better to someone than a $150-$200 bottle from France, whereas the $200 bottle from France will taste better than $2 Chuck to someone. So it's all about personal preference, and your taste in that respect.
I mean,
too.
not for nothing. When you could say the same
Hey,
thing
Steve-
about turbos. Just go
True.
through. Just go through the.
Yeah.
Why did you go with this? Why aren't you using
True.
this? Like everything in cars, people have
True.
that standpoint. They have their pain threshold. Can everyone boost
Yeah.
an S550 Mustang for what I spent for it? No. Can they still boost it and do it properly? Yes, they might be risking, but it can be done. So
Yeah.
And they do it every day.
yeah,
Steve,
Right.
they would never laugh at you as long as you write that check.
yeah. They.
That's
And,
right.
Also, keep in mind this isn't Joe's Body Shop either. You got the best and the
Yeah.
best
Hey,
doing
look,
work. So
I got a quote from Jesse on painting my old V70R, and it was, and this was
Never
years
painted.
ago. This was like 2018, 2017 or whatever. But it was 11 grand with me taking the thing apart, and it was 15 grand with them taking it apart. So like, look, if you want to have your CRV painted by them, it's probably going to be about $15,000. So. But Jesse's always told me, and Jeff's always told me the same thing. He's like, if you want to come bring something to our shop and have it worked on, we'll do it. We'll work around what you want. Like, we're a custom shop. If you want a 1992 Toyota Corolla restored and done, we'll do that. And they actually did that. They restored the head of B&H Photo. They restored his Toyota Previa minivan for him to basically factory new, and he ended up driving
There's
it
a
again.
forerunner there.
There's a
Greg, there's a forerunner in the
Like,
parking lot.
they'll do whatever you want, honestly. Like, and it's not just because they're like, oh, we're only like American cars and we're only old school stuff. It's like, they're car guys. Like, they'll work on cars. It's cool that they don't care.
Right.
You're also giving
Yeah.
them tens of thousands of dollars too. So they're like, yeah, we'll work on
Right.
it. So they ain't picky at that
you get
point.
what you pay for. You get what you pay for. I will say that. You
Oh,
get what you pay
100%.
for.
And they are
But guys,
that echelon.
yeah. So guys, listen, my wife and daughter just rolled in, so I'm gonna go see them real quick.
Yes.
I'd hate to cut you guys short, but I need to do that. But before I go, I really do have I just want to ask you guys one final question. Where do you guys see shifting lanes in the future, or where would you like it to go? Like, what's your goal? Do you have a goal? I mean, that's my final question for you. I'm curious where you guys see yourselves, or where you'd like to see yourselves, next year, 2 years.
So I'll start because I think Chad was doing something real quick. But so for me, I want to see this get bigger. So like, not necessarily the stream. I'd love for the stream to get larger and larger, but turning this into a podcast and just talking generally about cars, having more guests on, people like you. We had our friend Chad Kirchner on last week from EV Pulse. We talked about electric vehicle myths, things like that. I think that's very cool. I'd love to see this get larger. The whole brand as a whole to get larger, but what we're doing right now with short form content really seems to be resonating with a lot of people. Like, it's pretty crazy the growth we're seeing on, like, not necessarily Facebook, which is our largest. We have like over 650,000 followers on there, but just in general on Instagram, like, we've grown from like 8,000, 9,000 followers on there back in April. We're now over 41,000 on Instagram just by posting reels and short form stuff. We're growing on TikTok. We're growing like everywhere with all this short form stuff, and it's fun to make, honestly. Like, it's cool to like take a news piece or a cool car story that Chad does from the NASCAR cheating stuff to just interesting cool car stories that people might not know about in the car realm, to just get that sort of fun information and newsy kind of stuff out there. I would love to see the brand just grow to where we can do it, have fun with it, and don't worry about car things forever. Like, it doesn't have to be the day job, but if we can continue to do that and continue to build our cars that we really love and own them and bring them to people to sort of continue automotive enthusiasm, like that's what makes me most excited. So we can continue to do short form stuff and podcasting stuff. I would love for it to be the day job, but I'm not sure that that's ever going to be a possibility. I just want to bring cool cars and our own opinions and voice to everyone, you know, from here until Kingdom Come. That's what I would love to do.
So
what about you, Chad?
So so there's, like in everything, right? You have the perfect dream scenario, and then you slowly add levels of reality to it, right? Like obtainable goals. Like Greg said, the short form stuff is really hitting right now. I would love to be able to get to a point where that was doing well enough for us financially to where that provides Greg and myself the time to get back into making long form stuff with cars, whether it be projects or just cool stuff surrounding cars. One of the things next week that I'm actually going to film the first episode is I'm going to start I'm calling it, rather originally I might add, Mustang drives. Shocking. But
Great name.
Greg will
Good
tell you.
SEO.
Greg will tell you, titling stuff, not my strong suit. But the basic premise is I go for a drive in my car, because one of the first things people ask who don't really know, they might know cars a little bit, but not a lot, is, you drive that car every day? Yes, I do. It has 800 horsepower. How do you do that? Carefully. What do you want me, like, it's
right.
The bottom line is,
Tom, to your point, not be in boost all the time.
You know,
just drive it like
number one, having the centrifugal supercharger, I can drive around town making only a couple pounds of boost. Like, it's not like I'm constantly in boost the second I go over like 4,000 RPM, or a lot max boost, I should say. But so I thought it would be cool to just drive around and see some of the random cool stuff that I'm into in New Jersey. So the first one is, I'm going to go up, and just because I saw a reel on it or something recently, I'm going to go up and I'm going to go to Hot Dog Johnny's. A week after that, I'm going to try to go to,
Hot Dog John.
You know, they've been featured in like New York Times and stuff like that, but it's just, we're almost, it's about a car, but you have that added layer, right? You're a car guy. You like Fox Body Mustangs, for example, but there's a deer behind you, so you're into hunting. You know, there's other stuff that you're into. We all got to eat. One of my first ideas for this was just go around and, you know, Greg and I have been talking about doing this for years. And again, I'd like to be able to stage financially where we could do similar stuff like this. But drive to New York, get a slice of pizza. Drive to Maine, get lobster. Drive to Chicago,
lobster. Get
the casserole they loosely call pizza. You know, all that little sort of stuff. So I'm just localizing that. So Jockey Hollow, or not Jockey.
Yeah.
I forget the name, but Linden Airport, where they had a NASCAR race many, many, many years ago in the 40s that was won by a Jaguar. The only European car to ever win in NASCAR, won at a track, and it was in Linden. You probably remember Flemington Raceway, that is now a shopping center.
Of course.
And supposedly they have a little
a
plaque where it was, to see what went up there, and that was such a unique little track. It was a square. You didn't really see short tracks like that too much.
Yeah.
But to go through that and then almost tell the story of, hey, we're in a Mustang. It makes all the right sounds. I'm on a drive. Try to choose a route that's as fun to drive as possible without making a half-hour drive 3.5 hours. You know, again, just time management. But I'd love to be able to do stuff like that on a little more, not a high production, but to be able to do it with Greg, to do it with, Greg or Hanson.
To do it as buddies.
You know, to do it as part of the,
I get it
and
totally.
To not have to, you know, to be able to spend a little bit of money making the content and be at a point where we know, okay, this, for the $20 in gas we spent and the $30 in food or whatever, I know we're going to at least see that $50 back, because everything else is making, the short form stuff's our moneymaker, and that's a trend. But I'd like to make more adventure style videos. Like, not that that's an adventure, but you kind of catch my meaning. And continue to grow.
I totally get it.
And I would really like this and our freshly launched podcast. I'd love also to have this become a thing, like Greg said.
Yeah.
Because there's not a lot of, on the live stream side of it, there's not a lot of people doing it. And it's so cool.
No, like, there's not.
And that there could be a very good reason for that. Or it could just be that we haven't found, we haven't hit that right group of people to say, come in and hang out, talk cars, that sort of a thing, or what have you. But I can't tell you how cool it is to have guys like Steve, Doug, Christian, all of our supporters, Anthony. I'm forgetting names. Ryan was in here earlier. Every one of them. It's so cool that over the 2 years we've been doing this, I've only seen a few of these guys in person. But to have almost a relationship with people because they're into cars and they're into it kind of a similar way, or they at least find my and Greg's way entertaining. I think that is unbelievably cool, and I would love to grow that community. Growing a community and having the ability to do events. Like, I would love to do a Shifting Lanes car show, a Shifting Lanes trip to Tail of the Dragon, a Shifting Lanes car trip to an F1 race or a NASCAR race or something. Like, all that stuff. That, I guess, to answer your question in the longest possible way I could, I would love to be at a point.
No, it's fine.
I would love to be at a point to where we can have the community, because you see it all the time with like Cletus's channel. You see it with them, like Demolition Ranch, with when they go and do the cars and Cletus. Like, those communities come out in droves, and they get to hang out with and they hang out with everyone. They're like, hey, I've never met you, but you love this content creator. They're awesome, right? Let's be friends. Like, that excites me.
So that's pretty much our approach, and that's why we created a FiveO Asylum Instagram page, a FiveO Asylum Facebook page. The Foxtoberfest is one of the largest all Fox Body shows in the nation. We host the brewery night there. Throw like a big party, like all of our Facebook followers come. We all get together. We do our thing. It's awesome, man. So I totally get it. I totally get your goals, and it's pretty much my goals, just in a different direction. I don't do the video part, right?
Right.
We both do podcasts, a little bit different styles, but I get the goals. It's awesome.
Yeah, man.
So then I think
Really
that's a great place to leave it, because I know you want to go and see your family, but also let's get on your podcast, and not necessarily to say, oh, let's pimp Shifting Lanes out, but also because we want to talk with more car people, period, and have those conversations, whether it be about cars or life or whatever. We just love hanging out with cool car people and making new friends.
Yeah, so you guys will fit in our podcast. Awesome. And I would like to introduce you to our community, right?
Yes, please.
So I definitely want to have you guys on soon. I'll send you guys a message. And I hate to cut you guys short, because I feel like I could talk to you guys for hours. But we're going to leave a lot on the table for the next one.
Absolutely.
Yeah, we'll have you on again here for sure.
Absolutely.
And you'll get to hear. So I'm the Jersey guy. My co-hosts are one from Alabama, and one's from Tennessee.
Nice.
So we have a far reach, but the daughter comes first.
Family
so
first.
I got to end it there, gentlemen.
Absolutely, man. And we will.
Honestly, thank you guys for having me.
Yeah.
And I couldn't see the messages for some reason. I don't know how many people jumped in and out, but I'm for sure going to share this on all of my platforms. I wanted to promote it a little bit more tonight. I just didn't get home to work until right before.
It happens, man. And
yeah, no worries. We'll have you on again. We'll do this again for sure. Yeah. We'll promote it more. But either way, it's been a pleasure talking to you. And finally meeting you face to face, even though it's on Skype.
For real.
Via fiber optics.
And we're so close. We got to get together some of these cars. I want to drive in a Volvo.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, you are welcome to drive
and
this
car
maybe my
voice,
want, man. Absolutely.
And maybe my voice will be back by the next time. It won't sound like
it's been awesome.
Thanks for sticking in there with it. I appreciate it.
It's been awesome having you on. We appreciate you. And I'm glad this went well, because it opens the door to a lot of future hanging out content, whatever. Hanging out is content. I look at it.
Absolutely.
So,
absolutely.
Thanks again, Tom. And
let me just answer Christian. It's you can find it FiveO Asylum. It's just FiveO Asylum on Apple, Spotify, the word 5, letter 0, and then Asylum. Apple, Spotify, all major podcasts.
Yeah, Christian, if you're looking for the actual, just look at the bottom of the screen right under me where it says follow Tom and War.Admiral here. There's the Instagram as well as the FiveO Asylum with the Spotify sort of logo right there. So yeah, so please go follow there on Spotify, and also follow Tom and his build over on Instagram at War.Admiral.363.
Right. You can also follow the FiveO Asylum Instagram page. If I post them every week that we put them up there, so you can just link to them through there too. So
Perfect.
however you want to do it, I appreciate it. If you guys listen, again, guys, thank you for having me.
Yeah.
I really, really appreciate it.
Thank you, Tom.
And we'll talk soon. All right, buddy.
Yeah.